The Knapsack, the Hat, and the Horn, a tale of Brothers Grimm. There were once 3 brothers who had fallen deeper and deeper into poverty. At last their need was so great they had to endure hunger and had nothing either to eat or drink. And they said, "We cannot go on this. We had better go into the world and seek our fortune." Therefore they set out, and had already walked over a many long road and many a blade of grass, but had not yet met with good luck. One day they arrived in a great forest, and in the midst of it was a hill. When they came nearer, they saw the hill was silver. Then spoke the eldest, "I have found the good luck I wished for, and I desire nothing more." He took as much of the silver as he could possibly carry, and turned and went home again. But the 2 others said, "We want something more from good luck than mere silver," and did not touch it, but went onward. After they had walked for 2 days longer without stopping, they came to a hill that was all gold. And the second brother stopped, took thought with himself, and was undecided. "What shall I do?" said he. "Shall I take for myself so much of this gold that I have sufficient for all my life, or shall I go farther?" And at length he made a decision, and putting as much into his pockets as would go in, said farewell to his brother and went home. But the third said, "Silver and gold do not move me. I will not renounce my chance of fortune. Perhaps something better will still be given me." He journeyed onward, and when he had walked for 3 days, he got into a forest that was still larger than the one before, and never would come to an end. But as he found nothing to eat or drink, he was all but exhausted. Then he climbed a high tree to find out if up there he could see the end of the forest, but as so far as his eye could pierce, he saw nothing but the tops of trees. Then he began to descend the tree again, but hunger tormented him, and he thought to himself, "If I could but eat my fill once more." When he got down, he saw with astonishment a table beneath the tree, richly spread with food, the steam of which rose up to meet him. "This time," said he, "my wish has been fulfilled at the right moment." And without inquiring who had brought the food or who had cooked it, he approached the table and ate with enjoyment till he had appeased his hunger. When this was done, he thought, it would after all be a pity if the pretty tablecloth were to be spoilt in the forest, so he folded it up tidily and put it in his pocket. Then he went onward, and in the evening, when hunger once more made itself felt, he wanted to make a trial of this cloth, and spread it out and said, "I wish you to be covered with good cheer again." And scarcely had the wish crossed his lips than as many dishes with the most exquisite food on them stood on the table as there was room for. "Now I perceive," said he, "in what kitchen my cooking was done. You shall be dearer to me than the mountains of silver and gold." For he saw plainly it was a wishing cloth. The cloth, however, was still not enough to enable him to sit down quietly at home. He preferred to wander the world and pursue his fortune farther. One night he met in a lonely wood a dusty black charcoal burner, who was burning charcoal there, and had potatoes by the fire on which he was going to make a meal. "Good evening, Blackbird," said the youth. "How dost thou get on in solitude?" "One day is like another," said the charcoal burner, "and every night potatoes. Hast thou a mind to have some, and will you be my guest?" "Many thanks," said the traveller. "I won't rob you of your supper. You did not reckon on a visitor, but if you will put up with what I have, you shall have an invitation." "Who is to prepare it for you?" said the charcoal burner. "I see you have nothing with you, and there's no one within 2 hours' walk who could give you anything." "Yet there shall be a meal," said the youth, "better than any you have ever tasted." Thereupon he brought his cloth out of the knapsack, spread it on the ground, and said, "Little cloth, cover thyself." And instantly boiled meat, baked meat stood there, as hot as if it had just come from the kitchen. The charcoal burner stared, but did not require much pressing. He fell to and thrust larger and larger mouthfuls into his black mouth. When they had eaten everything, the charcoal burner smiled contentedly and said, "Thy tablecloth has my approval. It would be a fine thing for me in this forest where no one ever cooks me anything good. I will propose an exchange. There in the corner hangs a soldier's knapsack, which is certainly old and shabby, but in it lie concealed wonderful powers. Since I no longer use it, I will give it to you for the tablecloth." "I must know what these wonderful powers are first," said the youth. "I will tell you," said the charcoal burner. "Every time you tap it with your hand, a corporal comes with 6 men armed from head to foot, and they can do whatever you command them." "So far as I am concerned," said the youth, "if nothing else can be done, we will exchange." And he gave the charcoal burner the cloth, took the knapsack from the hook, put it on, and bade farewell. When he had walked a while, he wished to make a trial of the magical powers of his knapsack, and tapped it. Immediately the 7 warriors stepped up to him, and the corporal said, "What does my lord and ruler wish for?" "March with all speed to the charcoal burner, and demand my wishing cloth back." They faced to the left, and it was not long before they brought what he required. They had taken it from the charcoal burner without asking many questions. The young man bade them retire, went onward, and hoped fortune would shine yet more brightly on him. By sunset he came to another charcoal burner, who was making his supper ready by the fire. "If thou will eat some potatoes with salt, but with no dripping, come, sit with me," said the sooty fellow. "No," he replied, "this time you shall be my guest," and spread out his cloth, which was instantly covered with the most beautiful of dishes. They ate and drank together, and enjoyed themselves heartily. After the meal was over, the charcoal burner said, "Up on that shelf lies a little worn-out hat, which has strange properties. When anyone puts it on and turns it round on his head, the cannons go off as if 12 were fired all together, and they shoot down everything so no one can withstand them. The hat is of no use to me. I will willingly give it to you for your tablecloth." "That suits me well," he answered, and took the hat, put it on, and left the tablecloth behind. Hardly, however, had he walked away than he tapped on the knapsack, and his soldiers fetched the cloth back again. "One thing comes on top of another," thought he, "and I feel as if my luck had not yet come to an end." Neither had his thoughts deceived him, for he had walked on for the whole of another day, and came to a third charcoal burner, who, like the previous ones, invited him to potatoes with no dripping. But he also let him dine with him from his wishing cloth, and the charcoal burner liked it so well he offered him a horn for it, which had very different properties from those of the hat. When anyone blew it, all the walls and fortifications fell down, and the towns and villages became ruins. He certainly gave the charcoal burner the cloth for it, but sent his soldiers back to demand it again, so that at length he had the knapsack, the hat, and the horn, all three. "Now," he said, "I am a made man, and it is time for me to go home and see how my brothers are faring." When he reached home, his brothers had built themselves a handsome house with their silver and gold, and were living in clover. He went to see them, but as he came in a ragged coat, with his shabby hat on his head and the old knapsack on his back, they would not acknowledge him as their brother. They mocked him and said, "You give that you are our brother, who despise silver and gold and crave something still better. He will come in his carriage in full splendor like a mighty king, and not like a beggar," and they drove him out of doors. And then he fell into a rage and tapped his knapsack until 150 men stood before him armed from head to foot. He commanded them to surround his brother's house, and the two of them were to take hazel sticks with them and beat the two insolent men until they knew who he was. A violent disturbance arose. People ran together and wanted to lend the two some help in their need, but against the soldiers they could do nothing. News of this at length came to the king, who was very angry and ordered a captain to march out with his troop and drive the disturber of the peace from the town. But the man with the knapsack soon got a greater body of men together, who repulsed the captain and his men, so they were forced to retire with bloody noses. The king said this vagabond is not brought to order yet, and next day sent a still larger troop against him, but they could do even less. The youth set still more men against him, and in order to be done the sooner, he turned his hat twice round on his head, and heavy guns began to play, and the king's men were beaten and put to flight. "Now," said he, "I will not make peace until the king gives me his daughter to wife, and I govern the whole kingdom in his name." He caused this to be announced to the king, and the latter said to his daughter, "Necessity is a hard nut to crack. What remains to me but do what he desires? If I want peace and to keep the crown on my head, I must give you away." So the wedding was celebrated, but the king's daughter was vexed that her husband should be a common man who wore a shabby hat and put on an old knapsack. She wished much to get rid of him, and night and day studied how she could accomplish this. Then she thought to herself, "Is it possible his wonderful powers lie in the knapsack?" So she caressed him when his heart was softened. She said, "If you would but lay aside your ugly knapsack, it disfigures you so, and I can't help being ashamed of you." "Dear child," said he, "this knapsack is my greatest treasure. As long as I have it, there is no power on earth I am afraid of." And he revealed to her the wonderful virtue with which it was endowed. Then she threw herself in his arms as if she were going to kiss him, but dexterously took the knapsack from his shoulders and ran away with it. As soon as she was alone, she tapped it and commanded the warriors to seize their former master and take him out of the royal palace. They obeyed, and the false wife sent still more men after him, who were to drive him from the country. Then he would have been ruined if he had not had the little hat, but his hands were scarcely at liberty before he turned it twice. Immediately the cannon began to thunder and strike down everything, and the king's daughter herself was forced to come and beg for mercy. As she entreated in such moving terms and promised amendment, he allowed himself to be persuaded and granted her peace. She behaved in a friendly manner to him, and acted as if she loved him very much, and after some time managed to befool him, and he confided to her that even if someone got the knapsack into his power, he could do nothing as long as the hat was still his. So when she knew the secret, she waited till he was asleep, and took the hat away from him, and had it thrown out in the street. But the horn still remained to him, and in great anger he blew it with all his strength. Instantly all walls, fortifications, towns, and villages toppled down and crushed the king and his daughter to death. And had he not put down the horn and blown a little longer, everything would have been in ruins, and not one stone would have been left standing on another. Then no one opposed him any longer, and he made himself king of the whole country. The end.